Sakura. Okay, so I was reading this book by William Irvine on desire. And in the previous tour, I was walking around here with the Sakuras and I was reading a little bit from it. So I want to continue with this chapter on the conclusions. If we step back and look at the various strategies for dealing with desire, we find that despite their differences, they share certain insights. We shouldn't trust our desires just because we detect a desire within us. Doesn't mean we should take ownership of it. Many natural desires are parasitic. They take up residence in us without being invited, and while within us, try to hijack our plan for living. We should work to rid ourselves of these desires, much as we would try to rid ourselves of a tapeworm. I like this comparison. We need to be careful about turning to other people for advice on dealing with desires. So why am I reading this book then? Most people, after all, are slaves to their desires and therefore have no helpful advice to offer. Darn. If we tell our friends that we are working to overcome our desire to be rich and famous, they might look at us in blinking incomprehension and conclude that we have been brainwashed by some cult or fallen victim to depression. The exception to this is if our friends, because perhaps we live in a Hutterite community, are like-minded about the importance of mastering desire. In this case, turning to them can help us win our battles against desire. Those who lack enlightened neighbors, friends, and relatives can turn to the writings of Buddha, Epictetus, Thoreau for moral support. Mastering desire will involve a two-stage strategy. In the first, we try to prevent the onset of unwanted desires. This might mean avoiding certain influences, avoiding certain people whose own desires might be infectious, or maybe even avoiding the world, in inverted commas. On the second stage, we try to extinguish those unwanted desires that, despite our attempts to prevent them, arise within us. This might involve praying for help in overcoming desire, or reflecting on how absurd it is for us to have the desire. We should work to develop an understanding of desire. To win a battle, it helps to know the enemy. Anyone wishing to master desire then would do well to understand its workings and, more generally, why we want what we want. To develop this understanding, we might meditate, read philosophy, or examine the research of psychologists who have explored the role of our unconscious plays in desire formation and the way our evolutionary past affects our behavior. Among the things it will behoove us to understand are these. Oh, nice bullet points. First bullet point, that our desires generally don't exist in isolation. Instead, they come into existence because of something else we want. They are, in other words, instrumental desires. Furthermore, it is possible for a single desire to give rise to thousands or even millions of these instrumental desires. Desires, in other words, are like microorganisms dropped into a warm, nutrient-rich pond. Left to their own devices, they will reproduce until the pond is a fetid swamp. This in turn suggests that we should be very careful about the initial desires we form. But as this book explains, you cannot really do much about those because they're just forming randomly. That we have multiple sources of desire within us and they can give rise to conflicting desires. In particular, our emotions can give rise to desire that our intellect finds objectionable and conversely. When this happens, it will be impossible for us to satisfy all our desires. Yes, as I was thinking about this today. I was thinking about my job as a teacher, right? It's a stable one, but then I'm also doing tours, so I'm a tour guide, so I like the kind of adventure and new things. So what's always conflicting within me is the need for stability or sameness versus the new things, right? I want both, but then they're conflicting in the end. Conflicting desires. That when it comes to desire formation, our intellect typically plays second fiddle to our emotions. So basically, our desires are led by emotions. We gained our ability to reason not so that we could transcend our emotions and the desires to which they give rise, but so that we could more effectively satisfy these desires. The intellect is capable of forming desires, but they will typically be less motivated than those formed by the emotions. Indeed, someone who retains his intellect but whose emotions stop giving rise to desires will resemble a depressed individual. That we have the greatest control over the desires that have the least impact on our lives. If I detect in myself a desire to click my tongue, I can easily extinguish it, but if I discover that I have fallen in love with someone, I might be powerless to fight the feelings I'm experiencing. We have the BIS, which is the biological instrumental desires, if I remember well. Biological incentive system. Sorry, I just read that a few minutes ago and I already forgot. Yep. So the biological incentive system, which is something we have from our ancestors. So he's explained this. We gained this system through a process of natural selection. Our evolutionary ancestors who had certain built-in incentives for action were more likely to survive and reproduce than those who didn't. So yeah, we have this BIS, biological incentive system, and suppose our BIS, rather than rewarding us for seeking the company of other people, punished us, it is unlikely that we would be gregarious. Or suppose our BIS, rather than giving us a reward in the form of an orgasm, punished us with intense pain. We would, under these circumstances, be unlikely to expend effort trying to attract a mate. More generally, if our BIS did not reward us for being social, our desires would be radically different. In particular, we would have fewer, simpler material desires. Most people who want a big house, for example, want it not for its own sake, but so that they can win the admiration, or failing that, the envy of other people. Dum dum dum. Moment of truth. Okay, my husband arrived to the supermarket, and now I have to pick my dinner. Pick my dinner. Do you guys want to pick my dinner? Pick my dinner. It's kind of cold though. I didn't think it would get this cold. My hands are really cold. The sun set already. Okay, let me check the pictures. Wait a second. Okay, waiting for my dinner, waiting for my dinner. That the incentive schedule of our BIS was not devised to encourage us to have a happy, meaningful life. Our BIS is a consequence of our evolutionary past. We have the BIS we do because our evolutionary ancestors who had it were more likely to survive and reproduce than those who didn't. As long as their unhappiness and their feeling that life is pointless did not affect whether they survived and reproduced, as long as, despite their misery, they ate, they drank, they evaded predators and reproduced, their misery had no impact on the evolution of the human BIS. Haha. Nobody cared about the misery of the caveman. They couldn't even write about it, right? Where's my dinner? That we can choose to forego the rewards offered by our BIS and to accept its punishments. Every thought we are even though we are hungry, we can choose to skip lunch. Even though we feel lustful, we can choose to refrain from having intercourse. It is because we have multiple sources of desire within us that this is possible. Our emotions might push us to eat lunch. Those hunger pangs feel bad, but our intellect, if it is sufficiently well developed, might be able to overrule those emotions. Indeed, it should be clear that if we lack a well-developed intellect, if we lack willpower, we will have little chance of mastering our desires. We will instead be like cats, dogs, gerbils, I don't know what those are, and alligators, doing the bidding of our BIS without second thought. Do you know anybody who's doing that? Basically everybody in the reality shows these days. That we are insatiable. Gaining the object of our desire almost invariably reduces its desirability to us. We experience psychological adaptation. We take the gained object for granted and start feeling dissatisfied. To overcome this feeling, we form a new desire and work to fulfill it, thinking that this time will be different, that this time gaining the object of our desire will result in lasting satisfaction. Huge mistake. Huge mistake, my friends. That the worst way to deal with our feelings of dissatisfaction is by working to satisfy the desires we find within us. If we do this, we practically guarantee that we will never experience lasting satisfaction, since the desire we satisfy will quickly be replaced by another desire. Trying to gain satisfaction by working to fulfill the desires that arise within us is like trying to deal with a heroin addiction by working to get a heroin fix. It is better in the case of heroin to kick the habit, and better in the case of desire to master our desires to the extent possible, which is not too big of an extent. And as I'm reading about desire, I desire my dinner, and my husband still didn't send my dinner. Where is my dinner? Ugh. Let's take a walk. It's too cold. Is that a stray cat? Stray cat. Hi, stray cat. What Do you desire stray cat? Okay, my husband will buy makizushi. No rice ball. Okay, wait. Yo, kitty kitty. The cat is reading a book too. These days I was thinking about getting a pet, but I like dogs more. I desire a pet. It's so cute. Sorry, kitty. I like dogs more, but you're cute too. Just a daisy. 짜잔, 짜잔. Ooh, it's getting windy. You can hear it in my mic. And my camera is also moving. Ah! My gimbal fell over. Almost, but I caught it. I caught it. Caught in the act of falling. Yeah, the wind was too strong. And the kitty got scared. It's like, ah! You gotta get out of here. What's this human doing? Humans. Don't smoke. Don't throw your cigarettes here. It says. Sakura, kira, kira. Okay, and what else does he say? That the best way to gain satisfaction, lasting satisfaction, now he's telling us the secret potion, is to change not the world and our position in it, but ourselves. Sounds like I heard this before. In particular, we should work at wanting what we already have. Oh, that's an easy solution. I read this today already one time, and now I kind of rediscover it. I feel like I haven't read it. In particular, we should work at wanting what we already have. In doing this, we should remember that, in most cases, what we have, whether it be our job, our car, our children, or our spouse, is something that we once dreamed of having, or something that someone less fortunate than us presently dreams of having. Haha! Yep. Oh, the cat is back. Cat is back. I think They feed the cat, so it's thinking that I'm gonna feed it. But I don't have any food, kitty. We should endeavor to enjoy this dream rather than ignoring it to pursue some other dream. This dream. That complete mastery of desire is impossible. Our goal should not be to eliminate desire altogether. Short of committing suicide, that is impossible. Our goal should instead be to attain a degree of mastery over our desires. In particular, rather than simply forming desires in accordance with our evolutionary programming, rather than simply doing the bidding of our BIS, we should, to the extent that we can, take control over the desire formation process. That mastering desire won't be easy. Really? You don't say. It will require sustained effort on our part, and there will be setbacks. Having said this, I should add that mastering desire will be less difficult than we might imagine. Really. For one thing, once we come to understand our desires, many of them will simply vanish. They will fall away as Bhikkhu, I don't know how to, Bhikkhu Bodhi puts it, like the leaves of a tree, naturally and spontaneously. Furthermore, the effort required to master desire is probably less, all things considered, than the effort we will expend trying to fulfill whatever desires pop into our head. It is true that a person attempting to master desire will have to spend time reflecting on his desires and how best to overcome them, and might have to spend some of his free time reading philosophers or meditating. But the alternative approach, working to satisfy a never-ending stream of desires, will be far more arduous. The person taking this last approach might be forced to spend his adult life doing a job he hates so that he can afford the objects of his desires. His days might be frantic, while the person who works instead to master his desire will enjoy relative tranquility. Our BIS, as we have seen, has forced us by our evolutionary past. Was forced on us by our evolutionary past. Furthermore, its incentives are calculated not to encourage us to have happy, meaningful lives, but to make us feel perpetually dissatisfied, to want more, no matter how much we have. And to top off our predicament, we cannot escape from our BIS. Like it or not, we must live our lives with its rewards dangling before us and with widespread threats of its punishments. This, unfortunately, is the human condition, and the dinner is here. Dinner delivery is here. What? What?
Delivery.
Delivery.
Walt.
Walt?
Walt. Uber Eats.
Uber Eats. Uber Eats is here. What did you get?
Service.
It's cold. It's cold. The cat is loud. Strawberries. Strawberry. Whoa. Strawberries. Zoomed in way too much. Strawberries and you brought the sweets.
Chicken and
The cats are coming, be
traditional
careful.
rolls
Sushi rolls are our dinner for today.
and traditional rolls.
Cha-chan.
Chicken.
Okay, cheers guys. Goodbye. The cats are gonna eat our food. We have to protect it.